Welcome back to the Rage On podcast. I am your host, Dr. Kyle Dean Freeman, sex and empowerment coach and licensed physiotherapist. Now, today I have on a friend. He is in New York at the moment, but originally from Switzerland. He is a serial entrepreneur in the space of finance and technology, a father of three, and what I call a seeker of knowledge. He is now a coach through his company, Metamatics, helping financial executives function optimally using metacognition and somatic modalities. Welcome on, Wolfram Klingler. Happy to have you, brother.
Hey, thank you. Happy to be here with you.
So I have so many questions as I was reading up on you and taking inspiration from your journey. Now, before I get into that, could you just share a bit about your backstory, originally where you're from, life growing up, and what led you to where you're at now in life?
Yeah, so I grew up in Switzerland with hippie parents. My parents were in the 68 student movements and they were thrown out of a commune because they wanted to be monogamous. That was reality at that time. So I have three siblings, grew up with them, my father and my mother both being very anti-capitalist, which meant they always had money problems. Kind of the thing that often happens if you don't like money, then money will make you think about it all the time. And so very early on in my life, I realized that this is not what I wanted for my life. I wanted to have enough money not to worry about it all the time. Grew up, I went to the university, dropped out after a couple of semesters. This was not for me, set up my first company, failed first, and then took another attempt. And then in the third attempt, the company got very successful. I sold my stake in that company in 2020. I'm still shareholder in some other companies that I helped build or helped co-found, but stepped out of the business life. I think the reason why I went into business, why I became an entrepreneur, is really rooted in childhood trauma. So having been the awkward outsider, the nerd at school, and having been mobbed and having been kind of outcasted, at least that's how I felt. And my reaction already as a child always was, I'm going to show you one day. And that meant on one hand that I kind of had dissociated from the sensitive part, from the pain, but also meant I drew a lot of strength from this adversity. And it made me do things that very few people will do, take risks that very few people will take, tolerate a lot of frustration that it takes in order to become successful as an entrepreneur. Having become successful, then the question came up, well, what now? I've done that. I've become more successful than anyone that I've grown up with or that I know. And I realized that I needed to integrate the parts of me that I had dissociated earlier on in my life and really get back sensitivity and the ability to feel that I had to dissociate as a consequence of how I grew up. And so that brought me in a completely different path. I kind of felt this unconsciously already a lot earlier. I started to meditate about 18 years ago and started to do inner work, but it wasn't until I really became successful that I kind of went on the other side. I mean, that's how I call it.
I love it, man. And it resonates a bit with my story as well. Just growing up with parents who had money issues. I know I grew up with a Jewish mother in New York who was very fearful and scarce mindset, just based on her upbringing, unfortunately. And I know that impacted my relationship with money. Everything was about money. That was the only thing that seemed important growing up, and it impacted me as well. Uh, Growing up with those types of parents, how did that really impact you as a child, that led to you having some of these insecurities, feeling like, as you stated in one of your articles, a sensitive weirdo or a nerd? How did that lead to you having these crippling insecurities that pushed you to become this entrepreneur and strive for success?
Yeah, so there was just a lot of things that we were not that we couldn't have. There was a lot of things, a lot of concepts and how we as children and were made to be different than all the other kids around. And I don't think my parents realized a lot of this. I think this was just really what they believed in, and this was the best they could do.
Mhm.
It took me a long time to realize that this is the best they could do, and kind of come to terms with that. But it certainly the way we were brought up was so different from everything that happened around, that certainly that made it much harder to connect with other children. Like, for instance, we didn't have a TV. It's not that I would have wanted to watch a lot of TV, but it's just you're an outsider because, that's what everybody's talking about, and you just don't know. You're just that awkward kid that never watches TV. And on the other hand, looking back at it, we were read stories every night, fairy tales, legends, mythologies from different cultures. It's an amazing treasure that we were given, but still on the connection side with the peers, it made it harder. And so it made me, and at the same time, I educated my kids in a similar way, but I gave them the confidence that this is really awesome what we're doing. So they didn't, at least that's what I feel, my children didn't suffer from these insecurities as much as I did. And yet I, in some ways, like especially the storytelling and sharing these treasures of ancient cultures and different cultures, this is something I did as well. But also really making them aware that this is something very special, and this means that this is something beautiful. And I wasn't kind of, yeah, I think my parents wanted us to be humble, but in a way that actually was not good for self-confidence.
Mhm. And with that, with some of those insecurities and that unique upbringing, did you hold on to a lot of anger as a kid? I know you stated that you wanted to, quote unquote, prove to some of the other people that you were capable. Did you hold on to a lot of anger that drove you throughout this period of your life?
Definitely. I mean, I was very angry as a child, and there was a lot of anger. And I feel like it was very difficult for my parents to deal with it. And I feel honestly that this is releasing my repressed anger is something that was very much at the core of what made me successful in business. So I was in a business where where it needed a lot of confrontation,
Mhm.
a lot of tough negotiations, and this was like going to war every time. I enjoyed that enormously, and it was a great way to kind of process and let out a lot of repressed anger. And sometimes I still feel there's not that huge reservoir of unprocessed anger that kind of gets activated anytime when something happens. That's not how it is anymore, but I still feel there is still more anger to be processed.
Mhm. Yeah, it sounds to me because I mean the name of this podcast is called Rage On for a reason. And I find that our rage is often our darkness in action, that it is taking that pain and putting it into a creative process. And from what I hear you sharing in your entrepreneurial journey is that you brought that pain into your negotiations and into proving yourself in a way. What did you gain back from having that personality in entrepreneurship? What did it prove for yourself when you were able to find that success? Did it end up filling any of those holes or wounds that you had previously?
It's an interesting question. I'd say both yes and no. So it did kind of bring me to a place where I was able to open up and be more relaxed, just because I had achieved something that I really wanted to achieve, and I got a lot of recognition for it, of course. And at the same time, at the core, it didn't change it, but it made it accessible. So I
Mm-hmm.
would say before that, I wasn't even aware. I didn't even have access to what was at the core and what needed really to be healed. And for me, it was to become successful. What it allowed me to open up for these parts to come up and to heal. So in that sense, the success alone didn't do that. And I know a lot of my peers, once that just continue in the sort of the success loop, and that's what they continue doing because it gave them that recognition.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow I had a condition where my body told me to do something different. And I listened to that. Instead of getting medicated, I decided to change my life. And so that was the point where my healing journey really started.
Mm. Yeah, I know reading up on issues with blood pressure issues that came up and really inspired you to go and reflect on, I think something needs to change here because the way I'm living life might actually get me into a worse situation that I can actually impact my health. But prior to that, with that anger, prior to even the entrepreneurial journey, did you have a space or an outlet that you did process some of this anger, some of this emotion? I know for me, I was a drummer growing up, so I was into punk
Mhm.
music and I got to smash my drums, and that was my outlet because there was nowhere else
Yeah.
for me to do it. Did you have a space like that or something that you moved that energy growing up?
No, I really don't feel that I had that. And also, I became a father very early on. So
Mm.
also then, I was taking care of kids, of my kids. I became a father at age 22. And so I was really totally tied up with that. I loved it, of course, but also there was very little space for myself in that sense. And I think the processing of the anger, looking back, it was really when I started to go, when I in the business that got very successful, when I started to go in these negotiations against large financial institutions. And yeah, I had great pleasure in going to, it was the speed, the combination of cognitive speed, psychology, and rhetorics that was needed, where I would say in the financial sector, a lot of people have some cognitive speed, but the other two, the self-awareness, the psychology, and the rhetorics, not so much. So I felt empowered.
Mm.
And even though there was also a lot of tension associated with it, it made me feel very liberated to be able to go out and fight these wars and win them most of the time.
I love that because I feel a lot of men are missing that fighting spirit nowadays, that they've lost touch with themselves. They're very disconnected. They've been told to be softer in many ways that has pushed them too far to the opposite side. But with you, I hear a lot of the common traits of hyper successful people. There's typically three. It's crippling insufficiency or insecurity. In some points, a superiority complex that I am better than you, that I can prove, and also impulse control. Do you feel like you experienced those three types of traits on this journey that led to your success?
Well, I mean, the insecurity and insufficiency, definitely, there's no doubt that I experienced that. And I think it's, a lot of people experience that. It's the reaction that you have to it. And the reaction was not being broken. The reaction was, okay, I'm going to prove it or whatever. So in a way, taking kind of, it's almost you use adversity as a fuel source. So that was
Mhm.
there. And then the superiority conflicts, I mean, certainly, that was always the point where I felt like I'm going to do something different. I'm going to do something much bigger. And so that was definitely there. And that was also important because, again, when I failed, that's what made me stand up again and said, well, there's no option of giving up. I have to do this. There was an existential need to get there. And there was no way I was going to give up. I just did it until it worked. And then the impulse control um, is actually very important and a very important one, I feel. So I don't feel that I had a lot of impulse control, quite the opposite. I think I was very impulsive. And
Mhm.
that changed with meditation. After my divorce, age 28 or 29, I started to meditate, Japanese Zen meditation, and I meditated very intensely for a long time, for more than 10 years, which means every single day meditating, going once or twice to a silent retreat where you meditate 10 hours a day, you don't speak a single word. And that ability to concentrate, to focus, and to stay with what is, that certainly was very important in later actually being able to have that impulse control that is definitely needed to become successful.
Amazing. Yeah, a lot of men, and I know I've experienced it myself, of wanting to do everything nowadays because there is an abundance of opportunities and everything is a woman in a red dress, I call it, calling you into different ways and getting you away from what you're initially focused on. So it's interesting to hear how, although you state that you didn't have the best impulse control, you still, in some ways, I see it as did on whatever that specific goal was of success. Now, despite the consequences that somewhat came with these insecurities, nowadays, do you find gratitude in having that upbringing and having those insecurities that led to that success? I don't like to look back on life and say I have regrets or whatnot. I don't think it's a good way
Yeah.
of living. I am curious. Do you have full gratitude for it, or do you wish that you didn't have to go through that kind of period of your life?
I never had the wish that I wouldn't have gone through it. There was a long period where there was anger about it.
Hmm.
And in the meantime, definitely there is gratitude. There's gratitude for, and that came also with the realization at some point that the deep realization, not just the intellectual realization, that my parents really did the best they could.
Hmm.
That they really were brought up with their own difficulties, with their own in their own predicament, and for a long time I was kind of resentful. I would have wanted them to act differently, and that kind of prevented the gratitude. But in the meantime, I've processed that, and just not so long ago did a family constellation where I was feeling I was able to resolve big blockage that I had towards my mother.
Mm.
So now there is a lot of gratitude, and there's a lot of gratitude for my path, also for the last part of my path, going after becoming successful, deciding to go on a totally different journey, and for listening to my body instead of just taking some medication.
Yeah, it's super important, especially now with cell phones, technology, everyone's super disconnected from themselves, from their body. And when you were in that state of feeling disconnected through this journey and just in this fight or flight mode, as you referred to it, of I just need to get the job done, I need to prove this thing, I need to be successful. What was the fear on the other side of failing? What did that mean for you if you didn't make it, if you were not successful, if you did not prove yourself to those people?
Honestly, that was never a thought. It was really, and I think I was, that's kind of the thing. I was pretty fearless, also because I was dissociated of the part that felt the fear.
Mm,
But it was very much kind of this energy of I'm going to do it no matter what. So the thought, what happens if I fail? Um, that really wasn't there. It was just
yeah.
not an option. And I remember like one of the first investor in my business, outside investor, because it took longer, I needed more money. I came to him and with a business plan, and he just told me, Wolfram, I'm not going to read your business plan. It's not going to work out anyway. I want to know, do you have this drive to make it happen no matter what? If it doesn't work on this walking straight, are you going to go left? Are you going to go right? Are you going to go in circles? And I go, are you going to go whatever? Are you going to do whatever it takes? And I very much had that. I don't think it would have worked otherwise. And
Mm.
this is definitely rooted in kind of the trauma. But yeah, no, there wasn't the fear. There wasn't that fear. There was just this urge and this existential need.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like something that cannot be taught, that some people just go through these experiences that lead to this mindset. And I would, in some ways, refer to it as a delusion, but a delusion that's in some ways in your favor. That many individuals right now experience delusion that puts them down, that makes them feel the complete opposite, that they're never good enough, they'll never be able to be successful, and it gets in their own way. Do you feel you had this sense of delusion of confidence that drove you in that way to be successful?
Yeah, I mean, definitely there was a part of it was delusion, and I mean that's also why the first businesses failed.
Mm,
I think there was some big delusions there that I needed to go through, but also going through these delusions just makes you grow. I mean, there is you learn. You learn the hard way. It's like I did for some time. I did full kickboxing and in full contact kickboxing. If you get a punch in your belly so that you throw up, that will never happen again. You really learn it the hard way. And so I feel like going through these failed businesses, one of them quite spectacularly, um, luckily at an early age. I'm glad this happened in my mid 20s and not, like later on. But I really had to learn. I had to learn to let go of my delusions. I refer to it as I was walking around the world with a pink heart-shaped glasses with dollar signs in it. I believed in fairy tales, and that really cost me that really made me fall, and really
Mhm.
cost me a very bloody nose.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. And you brought up a point earlier about how you healed in some ways the relationship with your parents and why the upbringing you had was experienced because they are humans too. They're going through their first human experience as much as we know and just doing the best they can. And I know you had some struggles with your family growing up and raising your own family with kids and a wife, and eventually led to a breakup. Do you feel that a lot of the way you were functioning led to problems with your ability to relate to your kids and relate to your partner during that time?
So with my partners, yes. So the mother of my two older children, I think definitely I was not fully able to relate, and also with the mother of my youngest kid, with whom I'm in New York at the moment, with whom I'm very good friends now. But during the relationship, I wasn't open to fully open my heart. I wasn't able to fully open my heart. This happened only later, and yeah, the woman that really opened my heart um, really also triggered a lot of growth in me. It's this
Mm,
kind of moment. I remember that, when I used to be like stressed or tense, let's say after work, in my early relationships, that would just create explosions. Like, the moment I came home, and it has, of course, nothing to do with the woman, but I
mm,
was just tensed. And so with the woman that really opened my heart when I was stressed, there was these moments where she would just come and say, "Oh, I see you're stressed." Like, just no reaction. And that, of course, like breaks down the armor immediately. Like, it's an immediate shift when someone gives you that gift of just presence rather than
mm,
reaction. And so that was very, and of course, also with opening up, that a lot of, I feel like when we do open our heart, a lot of the pain that we've been holding, that we've been suppressing, comes up. And that's also what happened. And I'm super grateful for really making this. When we broke up, that was the moment that a lot of pain came up, and where I realized, um, where it brought me on this path of real heart opening, of opening my heart beyond just that one woman, but really opening my heart in a much wider sense. But it took that one woman to open my heart just a little bit, just to that one person, to
mm.
then really break it open far beyond that.
Beautiful. And I know since then you've broken your heart open a lot more. I know we've had interactions together on retreats, and I can't wait to discuss all of the work that you've done there. But before we get there, I'm just curious because I've spoken with tons of entrepreneurs, business owners, successful individuals. And throughout that journey, there was at least one time where they felt or they actually did lose it all or felt like they were going to lose it all, that it was the darkest moment. What would you refer to that moment in your life, or did you have a moment like that in your life?
I definitely, I would say there was probably more than one moment, but the moment that comes to my mind, so the business that became successful, we had some funding, but as usually with businesses, it took longer than it was expected. And I had two investors that were ready to step in, but I had to personally guarantee the money. So that I was in a situation where it was literally success or personal bankruptcy. And bankruptcy in Europe is not the same as in the US. It's a little tougher.
Mm,
So it was really a moment of make it or break it. And that time, when I didn't yet know whether it will work, but I knew what would happen if it didn't work because I had taken on these liabilities, there was moments where literally I had to go out and borrow, I don't know, $500 from friends so I could buy food because there was no money in the account. And I had kids to feed. And so these moments, going through them, there's no option of giving up. I could not, like, there's just nothing you can do. And those moments were, of course, they were very difficult. I refer to them as the moments of where I really had to eat grass.
Hmm.
And at the same time, they were going through those moments is what I believe enabled the success that came after. I don't think that this was the moments where I kind of lost all illusions or delusions. And I really feel it was necessary to go through that, and that this was pivotal in kind of actually the success that followed.
Mm. Yeah, it sounds like in some ways it was a form of a death of this previous version of you, as you began to unravel and break open into this new version. Do you feel like you've gone through versions of death throughout your life, whether that's death of your identity, death of your businesses, death of your relationships?
Yes, I mean, definitely. So the moment where there was the difficulties in the business before we became successful was definitely the death of the
Mm,
boy that believed in fairy tales and was in a way uh, very naive also, and yeah, really also very easy to make believe in that sense because of wanting to believe. And then I feel like after my breakup, the last breakup in 2022 with that woman that really opened my heart, there was another instance where I really felt like I wanted to let go of identity, of like letting go of, I've become someone, I've built an identity, I've become a successful entrepreneur, I have wonderful children that I have a very good relationship with. I've built so much identity, but also felt it also limited me. And I had lined up a project to build a resort in Zanzibar in Tanzania, bought the land and developed the project, developed the concept. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And then at some point realized this would be just the next loop, just the next thing of becoming that person who did this awesome transformational tourism thing. And there was a moment where I realized that actually I want to let go. I don't want any of these identity things. And interestingly, it was in a retreat where kind of that kind of dawned on me. It was in a retreat where I got a lot of feedback from people around me that said, "Oh, you're so cool." And in the first moment, I thought like, "Oh, wow, people tell me I'm cool. That's something I've never heard and always wanted to be." And in the second moment, it was, "Oh no, I don't want to be cool because then I have to behave as if I was cool all the time. That's very limiting. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be in this cool box." And that's where I realized, well, it's not only about the being cool, it's about pretty much anything. I don't want to be I don't want to be in any box, and any identity is a box. I really want to let go of all of it.
mm,
And really just open up to something larger coming through me, as one of these shamans beautifully said, allowing the universe to dance through you, and really open my heart. And identity in the end, at that point, it becomes a crutch.
mhm,
It becomes something that actually hinders the expression of who we really are and limits that expression in a way that keeps you small. And so I really felt this deep, deep, deep need to let go of all of the identities. And that doesn't mean I don't have any identity now. It just means
mhm.
I'm way less attached to all of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it sounds like there was a matter of bringing from the unconscious to the conscious of what you were seeking at the time, whether it was hitting that point of about to build this resort in Zanzibar, that there was something underlying that maybe you were seeking. Was there a difference in what you were seeking then versus what you're seeking now? Or are you even seeking anything at this moment?
So I would say that the sort of what I call the achievement paradigm is really over. I'm not
Hmm.
in the I don't want to, there's nothing to achieve in that sense. What I, what I do seek and what I do want, it's really just opening up more and more,
Hmm.
opening up my heart more and more, really just allowing, um, allowing allowing something bigger to come through, and any sort of and that really is what it means for me, opening the heart. It really means allowing something, whatever people call it, divine or bigger than ourselves, or there's so many different names for it, but really allowing that to come through and really surrendering to it. I
Mm.
feel there is an intelligence that is so much larger than my intelligence. So if I want to achieve stuff that comes from a place of very limited intelligence, if I allow life to show me what it wants from me, if I can surrender to that, there's such a huge intelligence behind that. And that's the place where I want to live from. I don't want to live from a place of, oh, I need to achieve this, I need to achieve that. I've done that for a long time, and it was very valuable to get me where I am. And also in the surrendering, you meet all your inner resistances. You meet all the parts where you are not yet letting go, where you're still gripping onto stuff, where you still have fear. And it's beautiful, the process of learning to hold space for that and to let go of that and surrendering deeper and deeper.
And I know it took you a little bit to get there, right? You've been through numerous modalities and healing processes, psychedelic medicines, meditations, tantra, so much more. Was there one specific modality or experience that really helped get a breakthrough into this connection with spirit, and break out of that achievement paradigm?
I would say there's a couple of them that, and they all mattered, but you know what really was very, very life-changing for me was Tantra,
Mm-hmm.
Neo Tantra. So I started Tantra 13 years ago with Osho Tantra, but kind of the Neo Tantra thing is where something opened up on a very deep level. It totally changed the way I have sex. I was always thinking these guys that don't ejaculate, that's like some weird shit. Like, this is like some overdone asceticism and some stupid ideology. I mean, I really couldn't relate to that at all. But then having an experience of actually this tantric orgasmic state of full heart opening, of full ego melting, of full body orgasm, it's just not interesting. The ejaculation is just not interesting. It's
Mm-hmm.
nothing. It's nothing compared to that. And so these states that were, I would say, stronger than almost any psychedelics I ever experienced through Tantra. Also, I realized that how much of my life was strategic. So me doing things in order to get somewhere. And what is it like to really act from authenticity? So not doing things because as a means to something, but just listening to what is there now, articulating it, voicing it, very much also just in interaction with women. I think there's been so much covered contracts in my interaction with women. So me doing things in order to, because I believe that if I do that, then women will do something for me or give me something. And often that ended up in resentment and frustration because a covered contract means that only you know about this contract, which is
Mm-hmm.
not very helpful. And so to just openly say what it is that I would wish, and be able to hold space for the pain that comes with a rejection or with a no, and but also really stand for what it is that I'm wanting, and or that I feel or that I wish, and acting from a space of authenticity. And I really think that tantra, the tantric practices, really changed something in that regard. It really brought this kind of realization. I had realized that on an intellectual level before, but all these intellectual realizations are great until you realize sort of them on a more physical and a more embodied level, and then they become really great. And so Tantra was very, very important for me. It totally changed also my dating life. I feel like I had a lot of hungry ghosts, or what I call the 800-pound gorilla that I feel I had, that, and whenever there was a sign from a woman, that 800-pound gorilla got activated and was leaning in way too much. And I feel that through Tantra, this whole part has been tamed. I can relax into it. I don't have to act on it. I feel like I was like always after getting the sex as the ultimate form of confirmation.
Mm.
That has changed. That has really changed through Tantra. And I really feel like the hungry ghosts have been transformed into something different. It also kind of shrinks the dating pool massively,
Mhm.
but also it doesn't matter because it's not that I'm not after the same thing that I used to be. I really want deep, intimate connection, and that's something very different from just getting the confirmation of a woman saying yes to having sex.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like you've satisfied that 800-pound gorilla's appetite that was almost a shadow of yours. That w w- I see it in your business life as well as in the relationship life, maybe a small connection of wanting to achieve and wanting to get that satisfaction of achievement because that meant you're good enough or you're
Yes.
loved and you're not rejected. Do you feel that connection existed?
Oh, totally. I mean, it's very much a sort of a pain pill for
Mm,
the feeling of not being okay the way I am or feeling rejected at some. It's really this feeling I had, this almost shame of not being okay the way I am.
mm,
And then success, achievement, financially, but also sexually, is like something that for a moment numbs that pain.
mm.
And then it feels good for one moment. But then, of course, these moments pass and it doesn't solve it. And so Tantra really confronted me with that in a very direct and tough way, but also helped me release it.
Yeah. I'm happy for you, man, because honestly, I see a lot of guys who are not off that treadmill. They're not off that wheel and they're still trying to achieve. They're still going into the next business, the next thing. And it's one thing if they are fully receiving fulfillment from that life and able to balance the other parts of their life, but many aren't. They're the ones that we say are crying in their Ferraris. And I know you, that's a Gary Vaynerchuk quote of I'd rather be crying in my Toyota Corolla than crying in my smiling in my Toyota Corolla than crying in my Ferrari. And it's true because I'm sure maybe you've met some of those guys, and I know with the work that you're doing now, are you trying to help a lot of men who have been maybe in a similar position as you to learn these somatic activities to break through out of their mental living state and get further into their body so they can get on that happier path?
Yes, it's typically a man that somehow resonate with my journey. So I don't have a website or any other kind of thing. So either they find me in one way or another, or they don't, which is also fine. But that also means that when they do come, they're very motivated. And
Mhm.
I think that's so for me one of the keys in my personal journey, and it still continues to be very important. It's really getting into the body. So being stuck in the mind is a defense mechanism for me for not feeling what's in my body. It's a
Mhm.
defense mechanism for not feeling what is there. So I know when I'm starting to ruminate that there is something I don't want to feel. And then uh, now I can consciously hold space and open up for what it is. And so it's such a key. It's also this telling stories to oneself. I've been telling myself a lot of stories in all different situations, and it can lead me, it doesn't lead anywhere. It's not the truth. The stories are a trap. It's in the body where you find truth. And for me, that's something I've really experienced on a very, very deep level, that this is where, because of transformation happens through the body. And so I am working with men on various different things, but always experiencing it through the body and opening up to the embodied experience is one of the core topics. I'm working on business stuff, I'm working on relationship topics, I'm working on whatever their topic is. I don't have a method in that sense or a structured process, but it's very much about learning to be present and understand what it is that is present in the body. And it's very simple, even it sounds very simple. Like for me, it was a breakthrough. I remember I had an instance with with the mother of my youngest where I was really upset. And that moment of not reacting to it, but feeling this physical sensation of it, feeling, okay,
Mhm.
how does this feel in my body? I feel this stinging sensation in my chest. breathing into it, being with it. And then after, I don't know, 15 minutes, it's just gone. It just pops away. It's like a little kid that cries in big drama and then, bam, it smiles as if nothing was there before. And that plop of state change, that's what you get if you allow yourself to process it on the physical, on the level of your body. And otherwise, the stories continue endlessly. And then you get into the power struggle, and then this happens, and then that happens, and it gets worse. And so, really going into the body and not just allowing, okay, how does this feel? What's the sensation? What's actually going on? And detaching from the story is such a powerful way to deal with life. So, I'm really, it's been very, very powerful for me, and I'm also helping others to tap into that.
Yeah. I love that. I love that you're bringing that into your purpose. And you bring up a great point that it is simple. It's such a simple shift. It's just almost that little mindfulness pause of instead of reacting to that bodily sensation, and it's instead responding to it. But I know from my experience, and you work with men as well, that so many men have that deep fear of surrender, of letting go of control, that it is such a huge mountain for some of these men to be able to go through. And so, has there been a way that you found to help men overcome that mountain if they are feeling that, to really sit in those emotions instead of
Yeah.
immediately reacting to them?
Yes, absolutely. So I think one of the key sort of journeys I take men on, I work with, it's helping them understand that when they turn away from themselves, it's their inner child they're turning away from.
Mm.
And just sitting there and imagining you see your own 5-year-old coming up to you. And I always, I feel emotional when I even talk about it. Seeing that 5-year-old you coming up to you and you pushing it away, is that something you would do in real life? Your 5-year-old coming up to you, needing a hug, needing to be held, needing to be seen, wanting to cry on your shoulder. Would you push that little boy away? You would never do that. Never, ever. And so this is the metaphor that I kind of use through hypnotic journeys, through going in sort of where I think, yeah, every person I've worked with understands that what you want to do is hold space. What you want to do is take that little boy into your arm. And by negating its experience, by wanting to push him away and saying, no, I don't want to feel like this or something else, you're pushing away that little boy. And that frame has something very powerful.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
that's
I talk
something I
about.
work with on.
Yeah, I love that. I do that as well with some meditations. And I always think about holding his hand. And in those moments where I am getting enraged or allowing my triggers to get to me, is what do I need to feel loved? What do I need to satisfy that little boy in me that I am
Yeah.
avoiding, that I am pushing away, and treating disrespectfully? What are some of those triggers for you that come up nowadays? And what are some of the modalities or activities that you'll go to in those moments to shift away and shift into that better mindset and way of being?
So I work with the breath a lot. So
Mhm.
conscious breathing, different breathwork modalities, or and that doesn't need to be a 2-hour session doing a full shamanic breath thing, but really working with the breath is something very, very powerful. Of course, it's also I've meditated on the breath for many, many years, but just also breathing in a specific way, releasing that is, and then it's really since feeling the physical sensation. So I think those two are the most powerful things. And I feel what's coming up for me currently, it's um, sometimes I feel like anxieties come up that I haven't experienced before in my life, which is sometimes almost comical. And when I feel like, okay, where does that come from? And I feel that's kind of just part of the journey of releasing some old stuff. And
Mhm.
again, it's this moment of pausing, as you exactly said, and allowing it to be there, holding space for myself. It's really a magical thing to say, okay, like I can just feel that, whatever it is that comes up, I can feel that for a moment. Sit down, it doesn't need to be long, and just feel it for a moment. Okay, what is it there? So not try to push it away. I think I would say instinctually, I would often try to say, oh no, I don't want to feel that. And instead doing the opposite and allowing, holding space for myself, just as if I would hold space for someone I work with. Not modify it, not push it away, not jumping to a conclusion. So this is something I had to learn for myself and others. When there's a painful moment, do you jump to, oh, but you could see this differently? Or can you just acknowledge and with a certain reference and understanding, hold space for it? I used to be really jumping to like, oh, but look at it this way or something, and trying to fix it, to modify it, and realizing that I've been doing that with myself as well. And so in that sense, also coaching for me is a great practice, and learning to do that with others and myself, of just holding space rather than trying to fix or modify. So I would say that's kind of yeah, that's what's been coming up on my journey recently, and the way I'm dealing with it.
I feel that. I feel that in my life as well. You have those moments, especially those moments where I've slowed down. And I know for someone who is a high achiever, slowing down and just finding stillness can be anxiety inducing. Many of the men that I've worked with, they can't meditate, or they say they can't, because it induces that anxiety, that they don't know what it's like to not be doing anything. And
Yeah.
so I love how you bring that up, of just sitting with it. And in some moments, you might be learning about your body, learning something that your body's trying to tell you. In other moments, it might be just watch it like a cloud passing by in the
Mm,
sky, let it go, and then go on with your day. Because oftentimes our mind does lie to us, and those previous stories from the past do come up. So I love that you bring that up. And at this point in your life, you've made the money, you've found success in your career, you've proved the haters wrong, if you will, and now you've done a lot of this work to really embody it and now teach it and find greater peace with yourself and your family and everyone in it. What values come up in when you're making decisions about how you live your life now? What are some of the values that you come back to ensure that you're staying on the track that you want to be aligned with?
yeah, I think for me, what I've learned throughout life, there is one central value, and it's one. It's only one. It's aliveness. So
Mm,
we are living in an alive universe, and anything that creates more aliveness is good, and anything that restricts or hinders or suppresses aliveness is bad. So in that sense, also, like, let's say that's how I look at religions. For me, most of the religions are actual Satanism, because they are destroying aliveness, and they are, telling us that our aliveness is bad.
mm,
So that for me is the central value. It's really this saying yes to aliveness, allowing for the aliveness, surrendering to it, which means that you could go, you don't know exactly where you're going, because life is not, you can't calculate it, you can't predict it. It's not that. And then of course it's very much about opening the heart again and again and again, and opening it more, and really allowing love. Really allowing love to come through consciously. And love is not in terms of this um, doing good thing. That's not what I personally relate to with love. It might result in that, but it's first of all really holding space for myself and for others and for what is, from a heartfelt space, from a place of empathy, from a place of understanding. So remember, as a reaction to my to the rejections that I experienced, especially in childhood, one of my reactions was to kind of say, well, they're all idiots anyway, and kind of look at people as broken and push them away because they're broken, and also push away my own broken parts.
mhm.
And this is really an important journey for me to really catch myself when I do that with myself and others, And again, go to a place of understanding, go to a place of love, go to a place of heart opening. How does that look from a place of understanding and love versus from this perspective of broken? So that's something I would say those two. So the kind of heart opening and love, and then just as a general moral and ethical compass, the aliveness, those are kind of the most important things for me.
Amen to that, brother. Amen. There's so many men who feel broken nowadays. Society is a bit of a mess. I mean, I'm not in the States right now. The States are a mess culturally. I don't know what it's
Mm.
like over in Europe. I am curious. Do you notice throughout your career, throughout your life, and particularly now in society, do you notice a difference in men and what they struggle with being from Europe or specifically Switzerland versus American men? Do you notice a difference?
Well, what comes to my mind is just I've been in the States a lot because I built one of my businesses here. So I was for a couple of years flying over here once a month for a week or once every 6 weeks. And one of the things that struck me, and it's just an observation because I can't say I know much about American men, but it's like when you go dancing, when you go to a space where you can dance, whether it's a disco or a nightclub or whatever, American men often don't dance. They're afraid of that self-expression. And I remember like dancing crazy here in a club in New York and people coming up and asking me, "Oh, you must be a Hollywood star or something." And like making this, it was such a, and that happened multiple times. That I'm a very expressive dancer, I have to say. So, but I feel like there's a lot of shame of self-expression,
Mm,
um, of self-consciousness in that sense. And I have that sometimes too, not in dancing. There I feel very free, but that's something I noticed, and it's something where I feel like it's beautiful to let go of that limitation, of that self-concept. Oh, if I dance, I'm looking silly, or I don't know what it is, of that kind of shame
mm,
of self-expression. So that's something I noticed. Um, a lot of things that I noticed on the positive side. I think in the U.S., one of my beautiful experience I had in is standing in a queue. Switzerland, if you stand in a queue, my experience often is if you stand in the wrong way, someone will come up and police you. Hey,
mm,
there's the end. Like, do this, do that, whatever. And in the US, I had the experience of someone saying, I stood in the queue the wrong way. I said, "Oh, are you in a hurry? Please go ahead." Like, just from a place of an open heart, there was no
mm.
sarcasm or anything in it. Just of, "Oh, if you're in a hurry, please go." Wow, that was like so beautiful. This is something I've experienced in different forms and shapes many times in the US. Something that has like, yeah, made me like the experience here a lot.
Mm,
And then I think like in Europe, it gets more, there's more friction very quickly.
mm.
So those are two observations, one on the negative, one on the positive.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting you bring that up. And from the dancing perspective, I know there's just no dancing culture. Maybe more in the Black community in the US, but I just remember white men and women standing in circles looking at each other and just bobbing back and forth for the most part. But
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Maybe moving their foot to the rhythm or
yeah.
something.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
you brought up that point of judgment of those who judge outward. I always think of how much they're judging inward, and it brings
yeah.
up that dancing perspective of like they're probably judging those who are dancing. How much judgment do they have on themselves? But brings up I just really was curious about that, and I know the Swiss unfortunately don't have the best reputation. One of my favorite uh, celebrities, influencers of all time was Anthony Bourdain, and
Mm.
this Switzerland was he quoted his least favorite country. And so when you brought up this discussion, I was just like, maybe it's just the Swiss. I don't know. I haven't been yet, so I hope one day to get over there and check it out and see what the culture's like and see if anyone lets me go ahead in the queue. But with that,
Yeah.
where you're at now in life, and just a couple rapid fire questions towards the end. But one question that I love to ask here is this podcast is called Rage On, where I share these stories of men who have gone through darkness. and what is their reason for raging on and driving forward. I know what you might have said 20 years ago would be different. What is the reason you rage on forward now? And I believe rage comes from a place of love. It is our love in its fullest expression that we are putting our darkness, putting our creation into effect to create an impact on the world, on ourselves, on our families. What or who is it that you rage on for now in your life?
Yeah, two things that come to my mind. One is my kids, um, my three children that I just deeply, deeply, deeply love. And I feel very connected to all of them. I'm traveling with my youngest at the moment. And I think the other topic for me, it's really big topic. It's letting go more and more, and experiencing the beauty of life from the perspective where I'm not so where I'm not in control, where I don't have the fear that needs me to be in control, and that's something I want a lot more of. That's something
Mm-hmm.
that is kind of my, on a meta level, the practice of all the practices that I do. It's really about this letting go of identity, letting go of concepts, letting go of yeah, just anything that hinders full aliveness and expression. And when that happens in these moments, the joy, the heart opening, it's so beautiful. And I wish, and that's what drives me to really embody that even more. I wish this to be the place I live from every minute.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there's always going to be contraction and expansion, but underlying, I would wish that to integrate that even more, to live from this place of letting go and enjoying life, really, but on a kind of a enjoying the human journey kind of level. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think it's something we need more of, and we need individuals in that light to be expressing themselves as it gives permission to others, especially in the darkness of the days right now that we are experiencing on Earth. Suppression, censorship all over that. I'm proud of you, and I'm happy to know you as someone who is fighting for that expression, not only for yourself, but for the world as well. So with that, just a couple rapid fire questions, and then my final question for you as we finish up here. What is one non-negotiable activity that you do daily to keep you at your best?
Currently, it's singing.
Love it. Love it. I don't know if you want to hear me singing, but I love to. I had some Janet Jackson on this morning before this call. Uh,
Great.
what food is your guilty pleasure?
Hmm. So many things come into my mind. Um, well, I would say a really good steak
Mm,
grilled on the fire. Yeah, I would say that's about it. Yeah.
love it. Love it. I'm what I call a cheese whore. So that's one of the biggest reasons I can't wait to come to Switzerland is just feast until my stomach hurts. Awesome. But love a good steak. Number three, what brings you the most joy in life right now?
Heart activation with my children, with other people, with tantric practices, with singing, with meditating. Yeah.
Love it. And what is one thing that very few people know about you that you wish they did know, that you wish more people did know?
Hmm. That's a good question. Gets me thinking.
Yeah.
um,
I often
I
think of
think
it in a way of maybe people
yeah,
have perceptions of us, but they
yeah,
don't
yeah,
actually know the truth.
yeah. So I think there's there's two different worlds for me. One is the business world, and
Mhm.
one is sort of the private friends and family world. And I feel in the business world, um, just uh, I think the sort of the way I father, how much love I feel in that, in my role as a father. This is something very few people know or have seen, and that I feel that would touch the hearts of many if they saw it. But this is something I would like to, where I feel like, yeah, in the business world, that's something that's not very present.
Love it. Thanks for sharing that, brother. And just one final question for you. If at this moment I hit a button and your microphone could speak to the entire world and everyone could understand you, they knew English, what message would you share with every human being at this current moment in society in 2024 that you believe everyone needs to hear?
I would say if we can all realize that we're sparks of consciousness with a biological spacesuit on an incredible, insane journey on this beautiful planet, and get to feel how much joy there is in that simple fact that we make this experience and open our heart to that experience, the world would be a much better place.
It's amazing. I love that message. It made me smile. Your microphone is off, Wolfram. Thank you so much for coming on, brother. Thank you for being a space holder and for someone who is a seeker of knowledge, seeker of becoming the best version of himself and utilizing that energy to impact others, the world, your family, being a space of love. I appreciate it, appreciate knowing you, and thanks so much for coming on, my man.